Hello, my name is Isaac Fraser, and I am a student at Southeast Missouri State University. In this presentation, I am going to be talking about building inspections. I'm going to be talking about the history of building inspections, some common terms and uses of building inspections today, and then I'm going to get into different IBC codes that are related to building inspections and my thoughts on that. So first, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what building inspections are. Building inspections are inspections performed by a building inspector. The building inspector is someone who is employed by usually the state, the city, township, or county, and is usually certified in one or more disciplines that qualify them to make them a professional judgment about whether a building meets code requirements. A building inspector may be certified either as a residential or commercial building inspector. They can also be certified in special disciplines such as plumbing, electrical, or mechanical, and other specially focused inspectors who may inspect structures at different stages of completion. So sometimes building inspectors may charge a direct fee or a building permit fee. Building inspectors may also be able to hold up construction work until inspection has been completed and approved. So next I'm going to be talking about the background on building inspections. So building inspections have been going on for as long as buildings have been being built. But before there was laws that passed that made these official, people would build something and they would always ask somebody else that might have more qualifications or more understanding of the building to check over them and double check, see if they did anything wrong. Well, this has been popular for as long as buildings have been being built, like I said, and sooner or later there's a time that people wanted to make this legal and make sure that the people who are inspecting have qualifications and can give them a good understanding of what may be wrong with their building. And this helps liability reasons for the purchaser. So in 1976, the American Society of Home Inspectors was formed. This was called the ASI. And in 1985, Texas became the first state to regulate home inspectors and passing a home inspecting licensing law. Now, more than 30 states have inspection laws. But like I was saying, after Texas inspector licensing law in 1985, other states began to follow suit. Now over 30 states have some form of home inspector licensing requirements. Home inspector licensing has been a hotly debated issue among inspectors, with some arguing that it cheapens the profession by formalizing inadequate inspection standards. Others maintain that licensing elevates the profession by setting a baseline for what an inspector is reasonable for. But later on in the slide, I will talk about what I think about that issue. In the right of this PowerPoint, on the right of the screen, you can see a map with all the states shaded in light blue and dark blue. And this map represents states that do have licensing requirements for home inspections. So every state that is shaded in dark blue do have home inspecting licensing laws put in place. All the states that are colored in light blue do not yet. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about some common terms and definitions related to building inspections. So obviously when thinking about building inspections, there's hundreds of words that I could have put on here that what I think would describe building inspections the most, but I'm going to stick to four different terms and definitions that I think relate to building inspections the most, because these terms are what building inspectors directly use when they're inspecting. So building codes, these Building codes are sets of regulations that govern the design, construction, alteration, and maintenance of structures. So these are important to home inspectors and building inspectors because these are the codes that they are following by when they're looking at what may be wrong or what may need to change. They're looking at building codes. Ordinances, laws, and regulations set forth that differ county to county. These are also important because some laws in some counties are different than laws in other counties. So these are important to look at for building inspectors. Zoning regulations. Zoning regulations are zoning ordinance or a rule that defines how property in specific geographic zones can be used. So in some geographic areas, different building designs are going to have to be made. Contract specifications. Those are the rules or other protocols containing specifications for the contract that's in place. So this is important for building inspectors also because they want to follow by the contract specifications also. So next I'm going to be talking about IBC, which stands for International Building Codes, and kind of how they work with building inspections and where you can find them, where you can find the codes that relate to building inspections. So in the IBC, codes for building inspections and tests can be found in chapters 1701 through 1709 of the International Building Codes. And this is as simple as just looking it up through the internet, chapter 17 in the IBC. So a lot of the codes in the IBC don't directly pertain to how a building inspection should be done because there's so many special regulations that differ from county to county and what type of construction it is, but most of the codes in the IBC mostly give regulations on who can perform inspections and what kind of inspections are needed in the different types of buildings that are being constructed. So as I was saying before, there are codes in the International Building Codes that pertain directly to building inspections, but most of them have to do more with commercial construction than residential. So here are 3 examples of some codes that pertain directly to building inspections. So 1704.2.1 states that building inspectors must meet the inspector qualifications, and this has more to do with special inspections in commercial, but it's basically saying that the people who are going to be inspecting must meet the qualifications to do so. 1704.3.1 states that content of statement of special inspections must be made, and it lists out specifically how the contents of that statement should be listed out and what should be on it. And then 1705.12.6 talks about how plumbing, mechanical, and electrical components should be inspected, and that's also important. To the right in this slide, I have a picture that has some of the main components of building inspections, and this is residential, but usually they kind of line up with each other, commercial and residential. So you have some of the most important ones, at least: the plumbing, the electrical, the foundation, and the roof, and obviously the HVAC system. These are all important for safety and the lasting of the house in the long run. So next I'm going to talk about some good examples of the codes, the International Building Codes used in building inspections and how they're used. So making sure the building foundation meets requirements is a great use of how these codes tie into building inspections. Making sure electrical work is done to prevent fires, and codes that add to the overall safety of building. So these are all great examples of how IBC codes relate to building inspections because the building inspectors have to make sure that the construction of that building meet these safety codes when it was being constructed. Some poor examples of codes and inspections are codes that have bare minimum specifications. Those are codes that can be the bare minimum and can be less safe usually because people are trying to build in the bare minimum. Another poor example of those codes are codes that require more cost than passing building inspections, and this always isn't the case, but I could see that being a poor example to somebody who's trying to be more cost effective in their construction. And then lastly, codes that make getting licensed to inspect harder. So some codes in the International Building Codes uh, request that home inspectors for different special disciplines of testing, it makes it harder for them to get those qualifications in order to inspect, which could be a pro or a con, and it depends on how you think about it. Um, so I'm going to talk now about why these codes might be necessary in construction and specifically home inspections, because they ensure the overall safety of the building. It's a double set of eyes to get in there and make sure that the building was done correctly. It gives a standard for inspections to follow by. So every time inspections happen, the standard improves and improves over time as they find more ways to do things differently. So like I just said, every code is in response to prior failure. And then why might they be unnecessary? This is a little bit harder to think about because it doesn't affect building inspections as much, but some could argue that they decrease craftsmanship, can often turn into bare minimum standards, and they're less important for building inspectors. So with uh, often turning into bare minimum standards, this just means that when they are inspecting the building, they are inspecting it to the minimal standard instead of going above and beyond and making sure that everything is perfect. Some overall conclusion: if education of building inspectors were more important than the codes, then there would be more skilled workers and higher standards for building inspectors. So this is just saying that if the education was better for people who are going to be inspecting or constructing, then there wouldn't be a need for this bare minimum standard that is happening a lot of times because they would be building very good. And next, building inspections will always continue to happen and improve over time. This is something I definitely believe because of the liability behind buying something so expensive. I mean, you want to have a written statement that says that someone came in and a professional came in and checked your building and they passed it. Yeah, like I said, it ensures more reliable transactions and buyers are more satisfied knowing an official inspected their building. So thank you for listening to my presentation. In this next slide are just some resources from some of the information that I pulled offline, and I hope that everybody has a good time in the rest of their semester. Thank you.